Hey everyone, welcome to the Campfire chat on Forge Podcast. We're doing this a little bit differently than we normally do a podcast because of the virus and everything else. But what we wanted to do with the Campfire chats is kind of document how things have changed because of the virus and how different parts of our world are changing. So, for instance, education is today's topic, and we'll also talk about small businesses, churches, and other areas. And also, next Friday, we'll be having Jason Thacker, who is an author and a Southern Baptist Convention ethicist, who's going to be talking about artificial intelligence and how the world changes and how career advice changes. And I think it's a very timely time to talk about this. We've been playing this for almost a year now, and I'm very excited to have him come on even more now because of everything that's happening. But right now, I'm gonna bring in Tiffany Crumpler. Tiffany, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit and kind of what you do?
Sure. Like you said, my name is Tiffany Crumpler, and I teach first grade at Lakeside Primary in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Been in education for, 13, 13 years
Yeah.
as a classroom teacher. So,
And also, full disclosure for everyone watching, it is my son Brody's first grade teacher this year, which is one of the big reasons I was excited to have you come on and talk about education because I think we can have a good discussion about how things have changed with, getting parents involved, things like that as well. Um, so, the first thing I want to talk about is kind of the timeline of events. Like, how did things start unfolding? When did you start hearing about the coronavirus just in general? And then kind of when you thought, okay, this is actually about to have an impact on myself and my students.
right. So I guess early March, there was buzz, right? People, you are hearing of people that are contracting it, not anybody personally, but it was all over the news.
Mm-hmm.
Things were happening, New York, places, even though they were far away from Arkansas or supposedly far away from Arkansas. Um, Things started happening on a global, on the global map in Italy and China and all that kind of thing. But it kind of, came to America, I guess, early part of March. How it affected us personally in education, I mean, we really were kind of up in the air. Is this gonna, or is anything gonna happen?
Mm.
Is this gonna change how we teach our students? We were all kind of talking about it, but it came to a complete panic mode, I guess, on March the 12th at lunch. Our principal comes in the door, and this is on a Thursday, and says, guys, we need to go to our classrooms and set up Google Classroom. Google Classroom is used in higher education, high school, middle school, even in upper elementary for assigning work in the daily routine of the classroom. But never had we ever thought that we would ever be asked as lower elementary to ever have to set up a Google Classroom or use it in any way, shape, or form. So lunch, March 12th, we were told that we needed to go to our classrooms, set up our Google Classroom on our Chromebook. That afternoon, we were told to send home Chromebooks with those students that had reported to us they had no technology at home. When you ask a 6-year-old, do you have technology
Right.
at home?
Yeah.
You get mixed answers. But anyway, I gave out a Chromebook that day. Several of us gave out Chromebooks on that Thursday. We come back to school on Friday. We weren't even sure we would come back on the 13th, but we did come back to school on the 13th. We were told to send home more Chromebooks. We were contacting parents. We were getting messages from parents, and so we did what we thought we should. We really thought we would see our students on the 16th of March, which would have been a Monday. But the 13th was the last day of classes face to face. Anyway,
Yeah.
very hard
So,
thinking about that.
Really, it's like within a span of 2 weeks, really everything escalated.
Halted.
Yeah, and
right.
and it got to the point. And then, I mean, myself, I had heard about coronavirus back in December, and at that point, it was affecting China and like starting to spread to some of the European countries. In January is when we started seeing coverage, I guess you'd say. There were no reported cases, but there was limited testing and things like that. And then in March is when things really escalated. We had a lot. We started, I think, really testing folks and started seeing these pockets around the U.S. And then I would say, what is it? A couple of weeks ago, testing really ramped up, was made more available, and now we're seeing a much clearer view of the actual impact for the virus. And in being in Arkansas, I think we're a bit sheltered from it. It seems like it's not as prevalent, and I think we're able to trace it back to people much easier and really isolate ourselves much easier than if you're in a place like New York. And so you had mentioned that, you know, previous experience of working with technology. I mean, there's things like I think it's Dojo is what we use to communicate, where parents and teachers can communicate, right? But outside of that, other than using the Chromebooks or the iPads in the classroom, there wasn't much experience at the level of education, like K through, I guess you'd say 6, maybe as much.
None at all. I mean, the kids would log on to their Chromebook 6 at a time, and they would do assignments that I posted or get on websites, resources that we use for phonics and math. And that's basically, we used it as a rotational, and they weren't fun rotations. Sometimes I didn't really want to get on them, but it was for teaching. You know, we used it for just background and just helping students with what we're teaching in the classroom. So
what was your learning curve to, I mean, getting on Google Classroom, and not just your own learning curve, but what's your experience been with the parents and students as well as their learning curve of moving to this more online type of education?
First of all, even to set it up, I was a nervous wreck because I was afraid I was going to do something wrong. I mean, you're told at lunch to set this up, and then by Monday, I mean, we were loading assignments. It was a very quick learning curve for us. And then on the flip side, trying to explain to a parent via a phone or something like that. A lot of them had to contact the school and be walked through it either by our technology person in our building, which is our librarian, media specialist, or someone else in the tech department was trying to walk parents through setting that up. It's just, you know, the short time and the turnaround that we had was just incredible. But our district wanted to make sure that our children did not miss a day of education, a day of instruction. So we were on it, I think, faster than most in the state, just for the mere fact that, you know, Lakeside believes in students
kind of
first.
Setting an example there.
Setting the bar, right. So
what about
13th was the last day of school. On that Sunday, Governor Hutchinson reported, you know, there were 16 cases in Arkansas. That was the 15th. And 2 cases were in Garland County. And so he wanted to start shutting down schools on that Tuesday. which was the 17th. But because there were already cases in Garland County, I know our district decided to shut down for Monday,
Right.
on the 16th. So that was
What about
very
the learning
quick
curve?
learning curve.
Yeah. So what's your experience been in terms of parents getting involved? So this has been, I want to say, unprecedented. I know in my 32 years of life, this has never happened. I'm not sure, what kind of the rest of history, but this is very unique in how quickly this came about and pushed parents to really start being way more involved in the education of a child, because you have to get them set up, especially for first graders, right? Like a high school student, I can imagine they're already familiar with the computer. They're just going in, doing their stuff.
Right.
What was the learning curve been for the parents that you've seen?
Well, I think parents were shocked at how much we actually did cover in the classroom, and in a day.
Yeah.
I've had lots of parents that were just amazed at how much we actually covered.
Yeah.
They were. It's hard to, when a parent is the one that is having to log their child on, like you said, high school students can get on, they can log themselves on, they can get on their Google Classroom themselves. A first grader, a kindergartner, they have to have that parent, right. Yep. A parent has to direct that. And so I had to make it very clear, that, and I think you can attest to this, but I made it very clear to my students, if they did not log on, that Ms. Crumpler had to count them absent each day. And so, they were very in tune to that. We made sure the parents understood this is a very serious thing. We do not want your child to get behind educationally. We want to provide the very best that we can for your child, but that takes, effort on your part as well. We don't mind teaching, but you have to make that opportunity available to your child. So
I mean, I would say from Courtney and I's point of view, so the situation we're in, very blessed to both of us having our jobs still, and my job in particular has ramped up because I work for a company that Chegg owns. So I think you may be familiar with Chegg. And so Chegg is running on all cylinders right now with education. And so then Courtney has had reduced hours, but a majority of her hours are still there, but she's doing teletherapy as a physical therapist. Mm-hmm. And so it is definitely an interesting time. And we just approached it as, okay, we need to adapt. There's no other way around this. We have to adapt here. So what needs to happen in order for me to get my stuff done, her to get her stuff done, and the kids to do what they need to do for school, and just exist right now. So, and really what it ended up being is in the mornings from 8 to noon, I'm really on kid duty, I guess you'd say. And then I'm able to get some work done, but I've really blocked off that time. And then I work later in the afternoon, and then she switches and she starts taking over at that point. She's been doing homework during that time, but now that some of her hours have started ramping back up, I'm going to start doing some of the schoolwork in the morning there. And it's just been, I actually think Brody's been more excited because it is on the computer. I've not actually heard a lot of pushback from him. Like there's some of the I don't want to do this one thing because I don't like this one topic. And it's like, well, you just got to do it. But I've noticed him more engaged because it's on a screen, which has been an interesting kind of insight into this. And so that's one thing that I was surprised by, but it definitely takes adapting, but it's able to be figured out, I think.
Right. Well, we have a routine in the classroom. Children thrive on routine. They thrive on knowing what's coming next. They feel more comfortable with that. And so having a good routine at home, like you said, you do dad duty from 8 to whatever,
Right.
and then you switch off. Any kind of routine that you can keep up will impact positively on learning. Whereas, when you're just helter skelter, don't know when you're gonna, every day changes. It's
Right.
very dramatic. We've already seen the trauma that these kids are facing just because their life as they know it has ended and another has begun. So we've got to take that into consideration as parents and educators to know that as much as I can make it simplified and they see my face every day, my students see my face every day and they see me happy and they see me
Right.
still teaching them that if that continues, then it's so much easier for them. And if they have a home routine as well, I want to give the same type of instruction on a daily basis. I want to make sure there's repetition there. There's aloud, there's a story, there's phonics, there's math, and then there's their activity for the day. And if I fit setting that routine for my kids, and then if at home there's a routine, I think it's a win-win.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, the hardest part, I think, for Brody has actually been not seeing you and his friends. I mean, like Brody is just an extrovert and just thrives being around other people. And so it's actually been very difficult for him to just understand why. And he said the other day, he was like, well, I hate this coronavirus. And I was like, yeah, it's like, we don't like it either, bud. And he was like, I'm not going to tell it happy birthday when it's its birthday. Like, that's the ultimate burn in his mind, is to not say happy birthday, sing happy birthday when it's their birthday. And so I actually I think that's been the hardest part for him, is just Sadie, who's, younger and in preschool, she can't be bothered. She's like, this is like great. I can just sit around. Mom and dad are working. I can sneak into the pantry. We're going to have to put a lock on that. Yeah. So what have been the challenges that have really stood out to you now that you've been doing this for, I guess, a month now? Is really, you've been working in this manner. Yeah. What have been the challenges that you expected or maybe didn't expect?
Well, I guess missing that interaction with our kids, teachers. I mean, I guess you expect it, but it happened so quickly that you couldn't think about it at the time. But just knowing how your kids are as an educator, and just having that everyday one-on-one connection has been, I know for us, extremely difficult. And like you said, the kids feel it too. We know that, but it goes both ways. Also, something that I, have come to see now is I don't have that time in my classroom. I mean, I'm making all day anecdotal notes. I do informal assessments. You're asking your kids questions throughout the day. I can tell you at any given day, if we're face-to-face education, how your kid is struggling, what your kid is great at, what they really like. And that helps to guide education individually, not as a whole group. But that, not having that opportunity to do every single day. I mean, when I'm making lesson plans, all that during a normal daily, weekly rotation, you understand, I need to go back and I need to teach this, or I need to go back and I need to hit this harder, or that is not there. I don't have that. I can't just tell from asking questions where we need to go.
That's actually been something as a parent that so the approach that I've seen you take just with Brody is, you ask us when he's doing his reading, send me a little video, And some people might think that it was like, oh, just as proof, but it's actually not that. What you then did was say, oh my gosh, he's doing so great. Remind him to sound out these types of words. Remind him
Right.
it makes this sound. Like you've still been giving that. I think I don't know if I've just been unaware of it, but I actually like that because it gives more quicker turnaround on that feedback.
Mhm.
And I hear what you're saying of like, those are the moments that really individualize education. Like, yeah, you've got a lesson plan and you're able to do that, but like those one-on-one moments are really,
Sure.
really huge
A lot of
touchpoints.
education is a child in the classroom raising their hand and asking a question about something, or if you see that they're struggling, you're like, oh, we
Mm,
really need to go back, or I really need to hit this harder, or it may open up a whole small group lesson. Um,
yeah.
Not having that has been probably one of the hardest. It's because that drives your teaching. So
Yeah. What other challenges?
just like you said, just the parental willingness.
Mm,
I
yep.
mean,
Yeah.
you hate to make those contacts, but you'll have students, turn in or not turn in work. And
Yeah.
you're like, okay, is something going on? Has there been something that's happened? You hate to have to make that contact because you're like, I know everyone is struggling right
You want
now.
to be sensitive. Sure. Yeah.
Yes, you try to be sensitive, but on the other hand, you're worried about the education of these children. I mean, that's what's paramount in my
Yeah.
mind. And so, and then of course, power technology. We didn't have power for a few days here in Arkansas and
Yeah.
in parts of Arkansas. So that, of
Yeah.
course, impacted. Finding when you are teaching remotely, the state of Arkansas has set up guidelines. The Arkansas Department of Education has said for students within this range, they need to have this much of instruction per day remotely. So I
Mm,
have between an hour and a half to 2 hours of time that I need to be providing. The children need, I'm sorry, not that I have to be providing,
right.
but the children, on the other hand, have to be receiving and
Right.
doing. They should not spend more than 2 hours a day in their home working on either lessons or work that you have given them to do. And so finding and deciding on lessons that I can provide and then work after the lesson has been very challenging.
Yeah.
Just because kids work at a slower pace, you've got some that work at a faster pace, and I'm not there to see.
Right.
I can't tell if Brody or anybody in the classroom is taking 2.5 hours to do something that should have taken an hour and a half.
Right.
Um, During the school day, I can tell who's struggling with what just by just your observation. And I can say, hey, you know what? Just do this. Don't worry about this other part. I don't want you stressed
Mhm.
out. Um, or changing the assignment for a couple of kids because they're having trouble with something. I can do that in the classroom, can't do that remotely. So
Yeah.
that's been a hard thing. You're thinking, all right, I have a time crunch. They're going to watch me do these lessons. And then they've got about 35 minutes extra
Right.
that they're going to spend
Yeah.
thinking or doing. And then, I'm a perfectionist. Another hard thing, I guess, is critiquing myself. I
Yeah.
hate my voice. I mean, I'm reading a book and I'm like, you sound so stupid. I mean,
Really? You do that?
I, yes, all of us, all teachers do that. I mean, we
Well,
think,
yeah, that's interesting. I don't have. That's interesting. I didn't think that would be. I mean, I, as a parent, don't think it's stupid when I hear it. So,
Well, I'm sure you don't, but we critique ourselves.
mm,
I should have said this in a different way when I videoed,
sure.
or I should have
You know,
brought this up. Or,
yeah, I actually think that like that goes outside of teaching as well. I think there's a lot of people that are very, very hard on themselves when I think it's actually we should be giving each other and ourselves a lot of grace in this time because it is unprecedented, right? Like we
yeah.
we get in our heads a lot of times, and it may be something like, oh, like I'm putting out a piece of content, whether it be teaching material or just something for your business because you're trying to adapt as a small business, or it may be something that's like just going for another job, like you've lost your job and you're like trying to go out there and you're like, I can't do this or I'm not good at this. I think we have to stop judging ourselves and stop, like, get out of our own heads so much. And really, I think one thing that I've noticed the world doing is being much more gracious to other people during this time. And that's one of the things that I hope really sticks around in this next time. Because I think we kind of like as a society got off of that, but now it's kind of leveled a lot of the playing fields. And it's like, look, we're all trying to figure out what the best path forward and whatever we're doing is. But I think that brings up a good point, that a lot of people are judging themselves. What about let's flip the script. What are the surprising good things that you maybe expected or didn't expect to see, but now you're like, wow, like this created this opportunity or this created this good environment? Like, what are those things you've seen?
Well, I mean, I really didn't. I mean, this is just on a personal level, but I did not think that I could learn all this new technology. I mean,
Hmm.
um, I can't even tell you how many new technologies and resources that I have learned to use in the last 4 weeks, and I'm still learning. It's a constant. I just felt like old dogs can't learn new tricks. I'll learn a few, but I've had, oh my goodness, I it's innumerable. I don't know how many new technologies and resources I've learned to use in the last 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Something else that is great, that's happened is, a lot of the companies that schools and that schools use for um, just resources, books, math help, those resources that used to cost sometimes an exorbitant amount of money
Yeah.
are now being given for free. You're talking
Yeah.
about grace. Resources in the classroom that I've used in the past that I've had to pay for personally,
Mm.
or would take and use the lower end, like they'd have, the normal end and then the upgraded end,
Right.
um, uh, basic and upgraded. But resources that you would have to just buy basic with because you couldn't afford the upgrade is
Right.
now
Yeah.
either free or at a great reduced price.
Right.
Like Brain Pop and different library resources for children are now free, which is a great surprise. But, I think that it's an incredible opportunity for us as educators to pull in those resources that are now
Yeah.
free with our
Well,
students.
and I think it's honestly, so Chegg bought Thinkful, the company I work for, just back in October, and they had this student first mantra, which Thinkful carried out very well. And I was curious, like, if it was all smoke and mirrors or if they were really student first. This has been a test of that for sure. And
Right.
I've been amazed by our CEO and our leadership that have been like, okay, we're giving away these products and we're going to they've reduced costs across the board just for accessibility.
Right.
And they're giving away scholarships and everything else and giving. And I think for businesses, it's really a test of that customer first or student first, whatever it may be, mentality of are you really willing to put your money where your mouth is?
Exactly.
And I think those are the companies and resources that are going to come out on top at the end of this and really grow from this because of that mentality, and not trying to just make a profit. Yeah, it's as someone in business, I can understand needing to make money, but at the same
Mhm.
time, again, I think it goes back to the grace, being gracious to folks during this time, and
Right.
not being tone deaf, I think would be the right phrasing there. Yeah.
Yeah.
What else? Anything else that kind of like
Uh, well,
surprised
I
you?
mean, just the use of the Google Classroom has really surprised me. I know I'm
Hmm.
in a lot of chat rooms and teachers that have never used Google Classroom are really, really thinking about using it in the future. Not,
Oh, really? Yeah.
for maybe instead of sending home paper monthly calendars, we would put it out on Google Classroom. Little things that we can do that streamline everything into one place. And
Hmm.
even use some of these resources that are now available for free. Hopefully, they won't go away. But like
Sure.
our libraries that have been opened up to us, all these book companies that are allowing us to use their, of course, our district is buying from them, but now they're providing all these things, remotely that are digital. And so we could actually, instead of sending a book home with a student, say, Ms. Crumpler has downloaded it to your Google Classroom, read it at home. Not that I ever want to get
Hmm.
away from a paper book, because I do think that's extremely important, but have
Yeah.
that as a
Resource.
as a resource
Yeah.
to use, because I won't always be able to have a paper book that meets maybe where that student is.
Right.
Uh, I may not have enough. I may have some, but not enough. So,
Sure.
uh,
No, I think that makes sense.
so
That's
that's a kind of
actually
surprise. What we really pushed back on at first and was scared to
right.
death. Now we're like, this is a really good tool for the
Hmm.
classroom that we could use, not exactly in this way, but
In
like
some way.
in
Yeah.
some way, like you said with Brody, your son. I could shoot you a little video of me doing a very micro mini lesson about how to help him do a reading assignment and send that out to, there may be 4 kids that are struggling with one thing, and I can go, whoop,
Yep.
attach
Send it to
to those
everybody.
4 kids, and then bam, you got it in your home.
Yeah.
Uh, and whereas you wouldn't have me there or any,
Sure.
a teacher. So that's been a
Well,
surprise.
I've actually been curious how this would impact the future. I think that things will go back to the way they were. We're still going to have like in-person K through 12. I
Mhm.
don't necessarily see that going away. Now, high school, there's already online high school education. It wasn't widely used, but I think they've probably gained a lot of followers for that format. And I
Mhm,
think there's
mhm.
some credit to that. If your high schooler knows that they want to start a lawn care business and they want to
Right.
finish high school while they start that or work under someone, I think that's
Mhm.
actually a really great idea. And
Right.
like I've got a friend that did that exact same thing, didn't go to college, graduated high school, and then started his own business and is very successful with that. Like I think the topic of careers and career paths and what higher education is going to be is going to change.
Right.
And I I don't necessarily think that a 4-year university, you're there going full time to school to get that education and then go into your career.
Mhm.
I think, something like an apprenticeship while you get your education is a very viable thing now, because of this
Absolutely.
type of thing that we'll see more of. But
Well,
I'm curious
uh,
your thoughts, like what you think what else, how education would change.
I mean, since we're using Zoom now for meetings with our children, I could see us doing that, and I know you'll probably shake your head, go, yes. Parent conferences could be done via Zoom.
Yeah. Yeah.
IEP conferences could be done via Zoom. I could do tutoring via Zoom.
Yeah.
Zoom has opened up, and right now it's unlimited access for educators. And I'm hoping that that continues, because I could see us using that as a platform instead of bringing people into our buildings. But we still need that face-to-face or screen-to-face. I don't know how we're going to say that. But these conferences where I really need to share with you what's happening with your student. And, to me, I feel like I've had more communication with my parents since this has happened than I had in the past. And I feel like this may be just the edge of better communication between educators and the parents and the families.
And honestly, I'm friends with a lot of teachers. Like, you and I have been friends for years. I've been friends with so many teachers, though, that have said communication with parents and parents' involvement has always been the struggle. Right. And I've been very curious to kind of see how this changes that over time. And I think it happened very quickly. We had to pivot very quickly.
But so to me, I think that's going to be a huge thing in the future. There'll be lots of teleconferences. I could also see now the governor of California has just given some information out that he's possibly going to shrink class sizes to keep students further apart. They're thinking about staggered times where your student would come in at a time and then half the population would leave and another population would come in. I mean, that's been batted around. I've heard talk on chats about that. I'm hoping that we have stricter, hypervigilance of sanitation in our schools. And we follow, that's been the case. Are we following what we already have set up? If a child is ill, is that child being separated from other students before they're showing some major symptoms? I'm hoping for stricter policies and more hypervigilance when it comes to that. So, and a lot of educators are thinking the same thing. We want more nurses. We want, if a child is even discolor, I can tell when a student walks in my classroom how they feel.
Sure. Well, I can imagine the parents are like, they've got a low-grade fever, but they seem fine. Like, sending them to school now, I think will probably be much more hypersensitive to that and saying, you know what, we're not going to risk it. Right. But we have the tools to allow them to continue like doing what they need to do with Google Classroom and the video and whatever else. Right.
Right. I mean, and another thing, if I'm sick or if I have to miss a day and I know it's like if I have a doctor's appointment and I have to travel and I'm taking a day, do you know that I could now video myself teaching math, teaching literacy, teaching whatever it is I need to teach for that day, video myself do the lesson, have the substitute play my video, and my children don't miss a beat when I'm out of the classroom. I can even come on Zoom if I'm home in the afternoon and they're in the classroom and I'm back. I can say, hey guys, I'm going to read you this book. We're going to talk about, characterization. And so all of those things is, this technology that we've learned can be used in so many ways.
Allows for more flexibility. I think for the teacher side, the parent side, the student side. It's funny, like you talk about how in such a short time people have learned to use the technology. I think that even extends to churches. I mean, we've seen churches go completely online. And for so long, as someone that worked in a church and was told, I'm like, we could do this online and and the thing that I always heard was, well, our older folks just don't have the ability or the access, or they just won't. They never will. And
Mhm.
I'll tell you so I sat in on a conversation at our church where they were talking about, it was the first Sunday we had done completely online. And our pastor, Phil, he was talking about, well, how many people don't have access? And out of all the people, I guess 900 something people, there was one individual that didn't have the ability and needed a DVD to watch the service, and they got that DVD, right? Like one
Right.
person out of all of those
Mhm.
people. And now small groups are meeting online, and it's a little bit awkward and more difficult.
Right.
I think for the actual small group part, it's actually not as bad. But the bigger group part, meeting on Zoom's a little weird. But like we've seen people adapt, and I guess it's just to point out the obvious that it is possible, like to get to some point in that. It's just, it sometimes takes something like a virus to do that.
Well, something that pushes you to that, where you have to,
Right.
it's a have to thing. Well, and also,
Yeah.
I mean, this may not be the end.
Sure.
We've been discussing how we could have rolling regional shutdowns,
Mm.
education and different parts of the country could be, if, and the flu too. I mean,
Yeah.
uh, if it ever came to it, we were that hypersensitive, we could have rolling shutdowns in all areas, just ever so often. And this would give us, now that we have kind
Yeah.
of this would give
Right.
us the opportunity in the future to say,
Yeah.
okay, well, we're going to shut down for 3 weeks. We are going to let people kind of, self quarantine, and everybody kind of do
Mhm.
their quarantine thing, and we're going to clean everything. And then, after 3 weeks, we're gonna hit this going again.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's a possibility.
So so thinking about the possibilities, let's hone in on, what do you think the rest of 2020 looks like for you as a teacher? What do you, at this point in time, and it'll be interesting maybe in the fall to come back and have another conversation about how it unfolded. But what do you think the rest of 2020 looks like for you as your first graders move on to second grade, and as you start
I don't know. It's
working with
hard
them?
right now, we just are wrapping our mind around not having our babies back.
Hmm.
Um, I guess the higher you get, I guess it's not as such a bond there. But I mean, I can't tell you how, shutting down your room in April
Yeah.
feels to an educator in the lower elementary. It's just, you're taking their things out of their desk. It almost feels like a death right now.
Hmm.
And so it's hard to really right now wrap my mind around, how the year is going to progress
Shaping
for
up.
us.
Yeah.
You know, we do Marco Polo with our first grade group of
Yeah.
teachers, and seen many shed tears and lots of heartbreak
Yeah.
because of we feel like we've been cheated.
Hmm.
So wrapping our mind around the fact that we can't, continue or finish this year, this school year, is kind of hard to fathom.
Right.
I'm putting portfolios together right now for my babies. So
Yeah. 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 It'll be definitely interesting to
all this
see.
little saved work, that I've been doing all year, and
Pulling it together.
pulling it together and trying to make something special out of it. So we plan to have one big celebration party, for my
Yeah.
class, because they have got to have closure just like I do.
Yeah.
And
That's a good point.
so I hope that, in our kindergarten that normally has their kindergarten circus, we just found out today that it's actually going to happen in July. And
Okay.
it's our graduation for our kindergartners here at
Right.
Lakeside, and we found out today we are going to get to have that. So, you know, closure needs to happen. I
Yeah.
see we've got to make this year, we've got to come out on top. We've got to make a positive from, you know, this corona, COVID,
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
We need to find a positive, end on a positive. So
that definitely makes sense. So we've got a couple of questions here that we can pull out. The first one is both of them from Devin, actually. The first one, we talked about a routine, but what is a good schedule to have for your students at home? Is there like a maybe framework or template that you think works generally?
Well, I mean, our babies seem to think better in the morning. So I would say if you have an elementary school student, set a time where they have to get up, they have to brush their teeth, they have to eat their breakfast. I would jump right into, you know, after they've done their chores, maybe made their bed or whatever, to set that schedule and keep it. Now, the high school students seem to do better after lunch. I've talked to some high school teachers, and they're like, you know, we would rather our kids stay up late, sleep in, and then start their lessons later in the day.
Yeah.
So, but with the smaller ones, you know, probably 8 o'clock, make sure they're up, you know, maybe not as early as school, but I always found that by lunch, their little brains had been taxed and it was time to just unwind for the day. So I would start with, you know, set that time in the morning, maybe 8 o'clock, 7:30, get your child up, have a daily routine of, you know, I get up, I eat my breakfast, I brush my teeth, I make my bed, or I pick up my toys, and then we sit down and we start working. Maybe for a high schooler, you know, it's totally different. And then, you know, you've got parents that are working. So it's hard to say. I guess it would have to meet your needs at your home as well.
Sure. Yep.
Because I've got some kids that cannot, their parents are healthcare workers or first responders, and they cannot get to their lessons until after, you know, 5 o'clock, 5:30. So
Yep, that makes sense.
Another one, a good routine daily. It stick with it.
Yeah. Another one, Devin asked, if you were given websites for math and reading, would you use them? And I guess maybe Devin can clarify a little bit what he means like using them, but like, or maybe he's asking if there are good resources.
There are tons of good resources.
Gotcha. We'll see if Devin can clarify that one a little bit. And then Courtney said, Tiffany, you're doing an amazing job. And so, awesome. Well, that is about it for Q&A. I really appreciate you coming on and talking. This has been really eye-opening, very good to discuss. And yeah, definitely look forward to a time when Brody can get back with the class and meet up again.
Yeah, it's a necessary thing. We want as least stress for these babies as we can. There's been a lot of stress, lots of trauma. I haven't seen stuff like this since Hurricane Katrina on these students, you know, and they need our support. They need to be able to talk about it. And I think a year-end celebration will definitely aid in that recovery. So,
Yep. Agreed. Awesome. Thank you so much, Tiffany.
All right. You're so welcome.
And